Welcome back to the closing bell. Today marks the deadline for Juul to respond to a letter put out by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration earlier this month inquiring about several issues, including the company's outreach and marketing practices. This comes on the heels of at least 13 deaths and more than 800 illnesses in people who use vape products. For more, let's bring in Dr. Mark McClellan, former commissioner of the FDA. Doctor, thanks for joining us today. It seems to me that everything we're talking about with vaping right now essentially fits into two buckets. You have all the marketing and the debate about whether this is incentivizing teenagers to begin vaping, to begin using nicotine. And then you have this bucket around all of these mysterious illnesses and, in some cases, deaths. Is that the way to think about it, that there's two different buckets that are being investigated right now?
Morgan, that's right. Two different buckets, but I'd add a third, which is the potential for vaping and e-cigs to be a safer alternative for adults who would otherwise smoke. And smoking is still the #1 premature cause of death in the United States, and that's why FDA was trying to find a path forward for regulation that would help people who otherwise would smoke get to safer alternatives. But we have these two other problems, these two other buckets that you mentioned that have really overtaken the whole issue from a public health standpoint.
Dr. McClellan, do we actually know, is there any more evidence or signs of what could be causing those illnesses and deaths?
Well, a lot of those illnesses and deaths are occurring in people who are using kind of homemade vape products, not some of the main ones where the ingredients are all listed and they're available through national marketing and the like, but other types of products, often products that contain marijuana derivatives, and oils. And it's thought that some of those additives may be playing a role. Unfortunately, because we need to get a more aggressive regulatory structure in place, we don't know as much as we should about exactly what it is about some of these vaping products that's causing the problems. But it's different than the ones that are, for the most part, being widely used by young people and adults today.
Why are we in a position, though, Mark, at all, where we're having to rely on after-the-fact analysis of possible deaths caused by this, as opposed to having done the necessary tests earlier, when now vaping is so widespread already?
Well, great question, Wilfred. FDA has tried over the last couple of years under former Commissioner Scott Gottlieb's leadership to put a more aggressive regulatory structure in place. Unfortunately, that didn't really get going until 2017, and it takes a few years. I know people think that's a long time to get regulatory structures in place that can monitor use, that can tell companies exactly what they need to do for products to be determined to be safe enough and appropriate for use. And FDA is in the process of setting that up now. There's a deadline of next spring for getting these regulations in place. I wish it could happen faster, and I know people at FDA are working as quickly as they can to get there.
Dr. McClellan, you mentioned that there is obviously hope and some reality in the fact that existing smokers of traditional cigarettes are using these products in general to try and get off nicotine. What about the thought of essentially making it prescription or restricting the use in a greater way, as perhaps initially was done with things like the nicotine patch?
Sure. Remember, it's not the nicotine that's the biggest health risk with smoking. It's all the stuff that's in the cigarette that is combustible and creates tars and lots of proven carcinogens. So it's really trying to get people off of those carcinogen products, the smoking, and into alternatives. And we do have some alternatives to cigarettes that are available today. Nicorette gum, other types of alternative ways of getting nicotine. And exactly as you said, there is a FDA regulatory process for that. They don't necessarily require prescriptions for some of these alternatives, and it's thought and hoped that some of these e-cig products could, with the right evidence behind them, become proven approaches to help adults quit smoking. And that's what this regulatory approach that FDA is putting in place intends to do. We are not there yet, and I think the companies in the industry should be proactive about trying to develop the evidence that is needed to show that their products are safer than cigarettes and other types of combustibles, and show that they can help adults quit smoking at the same time as they don't really encourage a lot of young people to take up nicotine use.